what is going to happen to Kate if I die now? And the answer came back, don't worry, she'll be fine, it'll all be okay. I was walking there thinking, am I alive or am I dead? All of a sudden, I felt Kate become part of me. And in front of me was this number like an alarm clock. We were standing on a road. It was a slightly convex road of packed dirt, and along the sides were flowers and plants with muted pastel colors, and the colors disappeared. At that time, I could feel Kate's feelings. And then we started moving down this road again. And she said, Annie, I would rather stay here with you. So I said, nobody's going to come and get you. You have to go to them. My sister Kate, she was only a year older than I am. And she had been battling breast cancer for 10 years. And finally, when she came home, they put her on hospice, she came home to me. So she was in my house, but along with her came her two cats and her dog. So, and I had two cats. So I had a zoo at home and it was a bit chaotic. And the animals were fine for the first week. And then the cats got into a fight. And somehow I got involved in the fight and I was either bitten or scratched on my hand. And there was blood everywhere. I cleaned it up and then thought I was being smart. And I took some antibiotic that I had in the house. And within a minute, I was in anaphylaxis. I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't see anything. And my sight was going. I couldn't put a coherent sentence together. And Katie was still pretty much okay at that point. So she quickly called a friend of hers who's an ICU nurse. And Aranel came skidding down and looked at me and said, you need the hospital now. This is bad. So I was taken to hospital. I don't remember much about getting into the hospital, just laying in the bed, and the nurse wanted to intubate me. She said, this is really, really bad. We're going to intubate you. And I said, no, let's just wait and see if the medications work. And she said, okay, but we're probably going to have to do it anyway. And then I was out. I was not aware of anything anymore. But I found myself looking down. So I'm in the hospital and I'm not aware of anything. I don't know whether I was unconscious or what the situation was. And I was suddenly in my living room at about ceiling height, but I couldn't see the rest of the house. It was like a gray, like a wet beach sand, gray, not threatening at all. And I was looking down on Katie sleeping in the bed, and her friend Aranel was sitting on the couch. And I remember thinking, why is Aranel sitting in a different place that she normally sits in? But as I'm looking at Katie, and Katie was sleeping, the thought was in my mind. The question was, what is going to happen to Kate if I die now? And I knew the question came from me, but it felt like it was from a bigger, I don't know, it was more of a universal me. And the answer came back, don't worry, she'll be fine, it'll all be okay. The voice that I heard wasn't through my ears. It was just I knew the answer, but it came from, I can only say it as the everywhere. It wasn't a singular voice, it wasn't a male or female voice, it wasn't anything. It was just the everywhere answer said, no, that'll be fine. And then Kate and Aranel, that disappeared. And then all the animals, her cats and dog and my cats, were sitting, and I could see they were all looking up at me. And the same question grew, and it was, well, what's going to happen to them? Because we were both really concerned about keeping them together. And if I died, then, and Katie's going to die, then what would happen to the animals? And the same answer came back again. And then they disappeared, and the faces of my 3 adult kids and they were all looking up at me, all 3 of them. And the same question started, but halfway through the question forming, I remember feeling, I'm not ready to leave them yet. So the question didn't finish, and the answer never came back because I had somehow seemingly stopped that. And I'm not sure how many hours later it was. I was woken up and all the machines were quiet again and I wasn't intubated. And the nurse said to me, she said, everything's okay, you can go home, but throw that medication away because next time if you take it again, you probably won't survive it. So she said to me, you can get dressed and you can go home. And I got dressed and I walked out the door. I didn't know where I was in the hospital. And there was a male nurse standing outside. And I looked around not knowing how to get out. And he kind of looked at me a little weird. And he pointed to the exit sign. And I remember walking down that part of the hospital not wanting to touch anything. Not quite sure why, but not wanting to touch, to brush up against anything. And I found my way outside, and the front of the ER typically has got that wide driveway area. And I walked across there and I could see cars and I could see people talking, but I couldn't hear them. It was dead. It was totally silent. And the thought, I was walking there thinking, am I alive or am I dead? I didn't know whether, because I was walking, I was there, I was seeing anything. How could I be dead? But I didn't feel alive. So I thought, okay, I'm going to test this. I'm going to have to touch something to see. And across that area was a narrow sidewalk with a brick building next to it. So I walked across to that and I thought, I'm going to touch the wall. And if my hand goes through, then I'm dead. So that was that thought. But on the other hand, I'm thinking, how am I going to feel about that? If my hand goes through, how am I going to feel? Am I going to be okay with that or not? So I was really a little nervous about touching the wall. And I did gently and then a little bit harder. My hand didn't go through the wall. But for a good, I don't know, 25 feet, I touched that wall all the way down the sidewalk. And then there was a signboard, the emergency signboard that was on two metal posts. And I thought, okay, now I could feel myself coming back to being alive again. That feeling of being dead was going, but I was exhausted and I needed to lean up against something. But I didn't want to lean up against the pole if I was dead, because then I would fall through it and then people would laugh because I've fallen. And then I thought, well, if I'm dead, then people aren't going to see me. But I still felt the pole all the way down, and I laughed a little bit and I leaned up against the pole and then got my nephew to pick me up and take me home again. So that was very short, and there were no bright lights, there were no colors, there was no sound, there was nothing like that. It was just informational, confirmation that Katie and the animals and my kids would be okay, but I wasn't ready for it yet.
And what did you make of it after that experience? So this happens, you come back to life, and what did you think happened?
I didn't think. I didn't think, because all I knew is that my sister was home, she was on hospice, and I needed to be there for her. So I didn't spend time thinking about it at all. After the other things, it was shortly after that, maybe a week or so, that I had the experience of this when Katie came into me. Well, let me start that one, because it all melds together. In that, Aranel had come in a few days later and she looked at me and she said, you need a break, go and have a shower, go and rest up, take a break. And her being an ICU nurse, I knew that Katie was 100% okay with her. Aranel could do everything and more than I could. So I was totally relaxed in taking the break. And I went to go and have a shower, and I'm standing in the shower, and all of a sudden I felt Kate become part of me. It was as if her whole body was inside me, her soul was inside me. And it was weird. And at that same moment, I heard her saying, ha ha, sis, look what I can do. And I just got this big fright, because I know she's asleep in my living room. And there's no way something like this could happen. I'd never heard of it. So I jumped out the shower and just kind of got back to getting busy and didn't think about that either, because my concentration was all on Kate and making sure she's okay. When that happened the second time, about 3-4 days after that, the same thing happened. I could feel Katie becoming part of me. And I thought, okay, let me see if this is really true, if this is something. And I reached up to touch my hair, because her hair was coarser than mine. And as I did that, I felt that it was her hair. But I was also, so it's the both of us standing here, I'm feeling her hair. I was also outside in front of us looking at this. So I'm feeling my hair in this body, but that one, I could see myself doing it. So that happened, and then I told Aranel, who was much more into the spiritual understanding of things at that point, and she could see where I was, because I was sole caregiver for Katie day and night. There was nobody else. Aranel would come in maybe once a day for a couple of minutes, just check that everything was okay, but she had to work and life. So Aranel said to me, you're tired. You can tell Katie not to do that again. And when it happened the third time, as that happened, I stopped her and I said, no, I can't deal with this as well as taking care of you, so you have to stop. And that hasn't happened again. I wish it would now, but it hasn't happened again. But with the near death and that, life was hectic and not getting much more than 3, 4 hours sleep a night and having to concentrate on Katie's well-being. I didn't have the time or the energy to think about it or process it. I kind of just put it away and left it for it all came out after the shared death experience. When that happened, that opened the floodgates to starting to be able to think about it.
So what happened then with the shared death experience?
Katie passed away just over a year and a bit ago now. She passed away end of January, a year ago. Aronel, we knew that Kate, the hospice had put her on imminent, and she had been unresponsive for 2 days at this point. And Aronel, hospice was in maybe twice a day at that point, just to check on her and her meds and her status and so on. And then Aronel had come and stayed the night with me. She'd stayed with me, and we pretty much didn't sleep at all, just waiting to take care of Kate, but also waiting, not wanting to miss her passing. And then at 7 o'clock in the morning, she got up and said she had to go home, get some sleep, and feed a cat and so on. So she bent over and she kissed Katie on the forehead and said, goodbye, I'll see you on the other side, or something like that. But she kissed Katie on her forehead. And I went and I let her out the door, locked the door, came back in. And Katie had a tear running out of her eye. And then the other one was pulled, her head was slightly to the side. And that stunned me in that she was still aware enough to know that she wouldn't see Aronel again. So I came and I sat on the couch thinking, okay, I just need to pull myself together because now I'm alone with my sister, who's my best friend, my partner in crime. I mean, we looked alike, we sounded alike, we were just so close. It was amazing. So I sat on the couch thinking I just need to pull myself together a little bit to be able to go on, because it's kind of scary being alone with your closest person and they're going to die. And as I sat on the couch, I had this absolute need to get up and be right next to Kate. It wasn't just a thought, it was, I have to get up, I cannot sit here. And end of January, it was still dark outside at 7 in the morning. But I got up, and you know, when you get off the couch, your vision is kind of towards the floor, you're all leaning forward. And in front of me was this number, like an alarm clock, like a big alarm clock numbers. 800. I don't know what that means. I don't know how to process that right now. So I'm going to put it away again. And I got up and I pulled a little office chair without a back closer to Katie's bed. And I put her railings down. And the bed was quite high. So I just put my head on the pillow next to her bed. And she's flat on her back. And I put my head on the pillow, and I found a song, a lullaby, an old African lullaby that my dad would sing to us when we were growing up, when we had to be soothed. And I found this just pouring, and I hadn't thought about this for many, many, many years. And this lullaby was pouring, but it was almost like a visual thing. I could see pouring out of my mouth right into her ear, which is her ear was right next to my head. And I'm like, okay, and I don't know how long that went on for, but somewhere in there, I was aware that I was only visible from my shoulders up. And Kate was also the same. Even the top of her bed had disappeared into this gray mistiness again, the same as the NDE. And I wasn't surprised and I wasn't negatively affected in any way. It was just something that was. And almost instantly, we were standing on a road. Now, the whole of my house had disappeared at that point. I could only see Kate and I from my head. And then that changed to us standing on this road. We didn't go to the road. There was no time in between. We were just standing on this road. Katie was to my right. And it was a slightly convex road of packed dirt. And along the sides were flowers and plants, as far as I could see, with muted pastel colors. And as a photographer, I looked and thought, that would take an amazing picture. That would be beautiful. And the colors disappeared. The flowers and plants didn't become see-through or outlines. I knew that they had color. I just wasn't being given the color anymore. And in that moment, I knew that was because my attention was supposed to be with Kate. It was like being there, but understanding with a different brain, this is why this is happening. At that time, I could feel Kate's feelings. I knew what she was thinking. I knew what she was feeling. I was not aware of our legs or our feet or any way of moving, and I didn't look at her. She didn't look at me. But I said to her, and it wasn't with a mouth saying, it was almost visual packets of information going across. And I said to her, no, don't worry. You can stand and there's no pain anymore. You can stand and walk. And because she couldn't do that for about 8 months to a year. She couldn't walk without pain before. And out of my peripheral vision, I saw her bouncing, testing her feet. And then I could feel her whole being changed, like, wow, this is amazing. Okay, I'm okay with this. She can stand. And she was standing more upright. And then I said to her that what we have to do is, this road leads to a gate. We have to walk down this road to the gate. As I said that, my other brain was saying, how did I know that? I don't know that. But I know that. Okay, so we're going to walk to the gate. And for about a year before Katie died, when she was going through something emotional or she had to physically move, she would say, give me a minute. And there was always that, take all the time you need, adjust whether it's emotionally or physically. So she said, give me a minute. And then we started moving down this road. Again, I don't know what I was wearing, what she was wearing. The color had gone. At that point, I couldn't see the gate at all. But we started moving down this road. And again, the movement wasn't walking, but it wasn't floating. It was something that wasn't important. So we moved down and we were communicating, but nothing specific. But we were communicating just gently. And every couple of minutes, she would say, give me a minute. And then after a while, we got to about what I perceived to be the halfway point. And she stopped, and I could feel that she was stopped solid. She didn't want to go any further. And she said, Annie, I would rather stay here with you. And I told her that I would obviously rather that she could stay with me, but that she cannot. We can't go back. We can't stay here. We can't go to the sides. She has to go forward to the gate. There's no other option. And along with that came an opportunity for me to again tell her how utterly important she'd been in my life, and how it's been an amazing life with her in it, and the thank yous and the appreciation. And again, that was like a package of information. It wasn't words. I didn't look at her. It was just the knowledge was being taken from me and given to her. And she was again, give me a minute, give me a minute. And then after a while, we started walking again. I started being able to see the gate. Now, the gate had square pillars and a rounded top. And there were bars down so you could see through the gate. And I started noticing people behind the gate. So, and I knew who they were. So I said to Katie, look, there's mom, there's dad, and I named off some people that were there. And she again dug her feet in it, and she didn't say anything, but I knew that she was concerned. She was very much a lady who was in charge of her life. So my response to that to her was, no, you don't have to worry, because I knew that she was worried that they were going to take her. And she didn't want to be taken. She wanted to go herself. If she had to go, she wanted to go herself. So I said to her, no, nobody's going to come and get you. You have to go to them. And she relaxed, and I felt her shoulders. I could feel a whole, physically, I could feel her relaxing, and emotionally. And we walked a little bit further, and then I started naming out again some people, and she tipped her head and she looked sideways. And we got to about what I thought was 6 to 8 feet from this gate, and we stopped, and we were just looking at these people behind the gate, and I couldn't see them clearly because the gate was there. And again, I was very concentrated on Kate. And so I said to her, in order to open the gate, all you need to do is lift your hand like you do in a classroom. And in that moment again, I wondered how I knew that. So there were it was like there were two me's. It was me there and then me wondering how I knew that. But that's okay. And I said to her, before you do that, though, I need to take one step back. And that was another one of those, but not even a why, but just, okay, I know I have to, but I don't know how I know. So she said, okay, give me a minute. And I took a step back from her, but I told her, that I would be staying with her all the time, that I was not going to leave her, but I just have to take the step back. And after a little while, we just stood there looking at this gate that was still closed. And she said, can I look at you one last time? And I said, yes, absolutely, you can. You can do that. And she was now a step in front of me, and she turned almost all the way around and she looked at me, and I remember her blue eyes and her brown hair and her face, and she looked so healthy. She was like, wow, this is Katie back to where she should have been. I would say she was back to where she was about 8 years ago, where she still had cancer, but she was healthy. She was on top of it. And it was interesting that in that moment I had color back, but just in her. The color everywhere else was still not there for me, but I could see the color, so I was being shown that she's totally okay. But she didn't look at me very long. She quick, and I remember thinking, I wish she could have looked at me for longer, because I could have stood there for a long time with that. But she quickly turned back and looked at the gate and started looking through the gate again to try and see the people. And then she lifted up her hand, and that gate slid open, but it didn't slide past the gatepost. It disappeared into the gatepost. I remember thinking, well, that's interesting. And it disappeared into the gatepost. And all these people stood in front of us. I could see individuals, but it was like a minimalist painting, I think you call it. It's where the artist will take one little brush and paint it, and that's the body of somebody. And then a dot would be the head and whatever. And I couldn't see their features. I couldn't particularly see their eyes and their mouths or whatever. I knew there was different colors. They were all wearing different clothing and different colors, but again, the color was gone. I couldn't see that, but I knew there was color. But I also knew they were all looking at Kate. Not one of them, not my mom, my dad, friends, family. Nobody was looking at me. And in that moment, it was utterly beautiful, because I didn't feel left out. I didn't feel sad that they weren't looking at me. I was just extremely glad that they were all there just looking at Katie. It was all about Kate. And one of the things that was really striking was my nephew. He had died by suicide 2 years before. And he was right on the right-hand side of this gate. But he was the one that showed emotion. He was almost leaning forward, and his mouth was open in a big grin. And I could feel him going, there's Marnie Kate. Marnie Kate is coming again. I'm going to see you. And he was madly excited. He was the only one that showed emotion to me during that time. And I felt that as important as it is to share this experience, the fact that he had passed from suicide was really... Anyway, so Katie and I just stood, and I just remember soaking this in. And then she said, can I wave at you one more time? And I said, yes, of course you can. And she had this quirky little wave where her wrist would bend. So she lifted up her hand, because she's in front of me. And she lifted up her hand and she waved at me without turning around again. The color in her had gone again at this point. And as she put that left hand down, her right hand went out to greet everybody. And only when she stepped between those gateposts and she made connection, was there this most incredible... She was just seeing people that she never thought she would see again. And it was the most beautiful thing to see in the booth. I knew she was okay. I knew at that point that she was okay. And she never turned around again after that. She went across between the gateposts. They mingled. I could see her disappearing as she was greeting more people. What was interesting about that is the people that I knew, family and friends, and then there were a lot of people that I knew, but I didn't recognize them. As in, if you go to a crowded area and you see somebody, I know that person, I just don't know where from. There were a lot of those people there as well. So she kind of disappeared into the crowd of people. And then I noticed between the gateposts, I remember thinking, why is there hair on the ground? And that it would have to be one really long hair. It was just a wavy line between the gateposts. And then that split. And everything, the gateposts and everything behind that, just split and moved away slowly. And I remember thinking, it's like continents drifting apart. And that world just disappeared into mist. And I remember thinking that it's a very light blue mist, but I couldn't see the color. but it just disappeared slowly, and just the mist just, and it disappeared. The road just ended gently where the gates were. And right then I heard this voice from about up this to my right saying, "That was a job well done." It wasn't, again, it was like the voice in the NDE. It was not male or female. It wasn't from a singular being. I just felt it was coming from everything. It didn't surprise me because all the way it was just Katie and I on the road. I didn't feel watched. I didn't feel that there were people or a lack of people. It surprised me afterwards that I wasn't surprised at the voice because I hadn't been aware of anybody else. But that voice came, said that was a job well done. And then with Katie and everybody moved away, now gone, I found myself to the left of where the gate was, kind of like a road that has a car pull off. There was one of those, and I was now in that, watching a mist fogginess coming towards me, very gentle, and I remember just feeling relaxed, just watching this coming closer. And then it was all around me, and I was just being held upright. And I remember feeling very, very comfortable, very peaceful, but I didn't have that overwhelming love or overwhelming peace that others talk about. It just felt to me as if I was being put back together, as if I had been a puzzle, that the pieces had been moved away from each other, that there were gaps, and that I was being put back together, not being made different, nothing different, just being made whole. It was like a healing. And I just remember thinking it was extremely comfortable. And then I don't know how long that went on for. And then I was aware of a pop feeling. It wasn't a sound. It was much like in some of the sports things I've seen on TVs where they hold up this big piece of paper and the ball team comes running from the back and they bust through the. That's what it felt like, is I was busting through this something, and I was back in my living room, and my living room was back. I could hear my animals again, and it was light outside, and my head was still next to Katie on the bed. And I just lifted my eyes, looking around, thinking, okay, what just happened? And my eyes caught the clock up on the wall. And as I looked, that second hand ticked over to 8:42. It was 8:42 in the morning. And I looked at that, and I looked down at Katie, because at that instant I connected the 8, and I looked down at Katie, and I'm literally right at her, and her last breath went in my face. I'm in the moment, and I've just had this mind-blowing experience that I have no idea what happened. And I look, and there's my sister who's gone. So I didn't pay it attention because it was about Katie right then. And it was only 2 or 3 days later that it was like, okay, I can address this now and try and figure out what happened. So I didn't address the near-death experience or that soul walk-in that I still don't quite have the right words for until that shared death was over and a couple of days had gone by.
Wow, I can
Yeah.
imagine. It's so I was tearing up there a bit, but I was thinking, based on what you've told me about your relationship with Katie, it almost seemed fitting, as you did so much in life together and you relied on each other so much, so you're partners for each other. It felt fitting that you would end it this way as well,
Together.
and you would
Yes.
be part of it. But I can't stop but think, usually we think of death as something sad, as something to regret. How did you process, so having had this experience, also knowing that Katie was ill, so she wasn't feeling her best, she wasn't doing well, how did you feel when you saw that she passed away?
It was like I'd lost my world. Just not having her here was not having her here anymore was I think one of the biggest shocks of my, well, it was a physical shock. But together with that came the knowledge that she's okay. So it kind of tempered that. I kind of thought about it the other day. I thought it's like you stub your toe and you can see it's bleeding or it's off, it's been chopped off. but you don't feel the pain. Or you know that the pain's it's there, but you can't feel it. So it was very conflicting in a lot of ways that I felt I couldn't grieve like I felt that I should have before I had this experience. I mean, I've seen a lot of people in grief. I'd lost people, my mom and dad, and a lot of family members. So I knew how I should feel, but I knew it would be worse with Katie because we were that close. And yet I couldn't feel that because I knew she was okay. So it's been a conflicting, there's been a lot of conflict. I'm not happy she's gone. I'm happy she's okay. But it's hard to grieve somebody when you know they're okay. Kate was also, I know about maybe a week before she passed, we were having a conversation because we spoke about death and dying, and she said she wasn't afraid, but she had these little tells on her mouth that I knew she was nervous. And she said, well, if there's something, that'll be great. If there's nothing, she's not going to know about it. So she's okay with that. But in that conversation, she got quite tearful the one day, and she said, Annie, I feel like there's going to be two of us going. She didn't say two of us dying. She said two of us going. And I didn't pick up on that because the last 6 months of her life, I didn't talk about myself much to her, other than, don't worry, I'll be okay. Don't worry about me. You just worry about you. So I didn't go into that any deeper. So she was aware. As I said, we were very close on many levels. So losing her was just beyond devastating, but it was at the same time, it's not, because I know she's okay. So it's been a tough trying to figure out how to grieve a lot of the time. Yes, you understand the guilt. It's like I should be feeling terrible. I shouldn't be able to carry on with life. But, well, not in the way it was before because of this huge loss, but at the same time, they're okay. They're on some other fantastic adventure. I saw with my mom when my mom was passing, for a good month and a half before she would see my dad and her brother and other people, she would have full conversations with people that simply were not in the room. And it was, I knew it was them because I knew she would speak a different language to them. And I knew what she was saying, and I knew these were things that had happened. There was a lot of memory sharing. And then as she passed with her last breath, came out the words, Mama, as she passed. And so there's a lot of those things that I've seen with my mom and others that really didn't stick with me. But then the one thing that stuck with me now with Katie as well is that once she was over that gate, through the gate, she never turned around. And that thought was also one that I spent a time struggling with, because she didn't need me anymore. But she didn't need me for the things that caused her pain. I was the one walking her through 10 years of cancer, whatevers. And she didn't need that anymore. So that was a happy thought. Whereas typically somebody who's leaving forever and not turning around would be almost hurtful. This was so there's so many conflicting thoughts going, the happy, the sad, the guilty, yeah, it's not easy sometimes. You know that.
Absolutely. And how did you sort of make sense of your life? Because I can imagine taking care of your sister also took a lot of your time, a lot of your energy. So all of a sudden, you're in this grieving process, and also the thing keeping you busy, almost keeping you from thinking of your feelings, is also gone.
Well, that was hard, but in addition to that, about 6 years before Kate was diagnosed, my son was diagnosed with leukemia. So I had my son with leukemia, my mom with Alzheimer's, my sister with cancer. So for about 18 years, it's been about keeping other people alive or keeping them comfortable or cared for, whatever. With Kate passing, it was 18 years of me being one thing. So I had to try and find, this goes into a lot of where I am right now versus a year ago, is I didn't know who I was. My whole core family is gone. I don't have, my kids are further up north done. So, and being here, being taking care of Katie, I hadn't even created the friend circle along with the COVID years of not being able to do that. So I found myself incredibly isolated. So I just wore out my floor just by walking around and around and around and yelling. And slowly I've been able to come out because there has been so much connection with Katie since she died. It's been both stunning and peaceful. That slowly, over the last 6-8 months, I've been able to find that I like having my feet here. I like being here, and I'm becoming more adventurous. I'm becoming more outgoing. I'm learning who I am, and I couldn't have done that when Katie was here and with. So I'm learning to be grateful, not that she's gone, but that I can try and find me. And that comes to one of the more powerful things that happened after she passed away. This one day I was particularly angry with her. I was furious with her because I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. I'd spent all my life doing, all my life, the last 18 years, taking care of people, and now all of that was gone, and I was lost, and I'm stomping, having a total hissy fit up my corridor, and I'm yelling at her loudly. And I said, how dare you do this? How dare you die on me and leave me alone? I mean, how can you do this? And I heard her sort of behind me, and I heard her voice, and I spun around at the same time thinking, has this all just been a nightmare, a dream? What is happening? Because she was so clearly behind me talking to me. And of course she wasn't there. But what she said was, no, Annie, remember last time you went first. Now it's your time to stay longer. Number one, how can she be talking to me? Okay. Number two, she never believed in reincarnation. So if I went first the last time, that means, number one, we'd been together in a life before, and the roles had been reversed. So that means reincarnation. And that's another thing that's helped me say, okay, I have to be present in this world to find my way. I have to find my way now. It was a job, whether it was with my son, who's fine. My mom, she saw her mom as she was dying, and Katie that I walked with. That was the jobs that I did were done.
Yeah. And then the job was finding out who you were.
Yes. And that's been an interesting ride. It's also been, because there's been so much contact. That wasn't the only time I've actually heard Kate talking to me. It's trying to find me, who I am on a human in this world, and how much I want to try and find out about that world. And I'm finding for now, and it's, as I said, it's only been a year and a bit. For now, I'm trying to concentrate on finding myself here before I go and try and find out more about the other life. And I feel that because I'm here and I know that other life is there, I can take my happy time and just find my time and find out who I am, because that'll be there.
And do you feel sort of knowing that connection is almost there for you when you want it to be, and if you really need it to be, is it reassuring you when you feel lonely or you feel a bit lost as to what should you be doing next?
I don't know that, both yes and no, because it's not a major thing. I felt that there will be contact from whoever it is that's died. It's mostly come from Kate. I haven't felt it from my mom or dad particularly closely, but that will come when I need it, not when I want it. So, and that's what's happened all along, is that it will happen when it's needed. So if I don't get, if I'm lost, or if I feel I don't know which way to go, I don't particularly ask what they would do, because I know I have to figure it out here. I do find that in the times that I'm having a really hard time and I feel a little, as I say, wobbly, odd little things will happen. It's like I do sketches, and then my light will start flickering. And I can say, okay, Katie, if that's you, stop and start up again in a couple of minutes. And it'll do that. And then it's like, okay, this is okay. But it's not, I haven't found that, because so much has been happening. I've known that she's okay. I know that there's life after this, that I haven't really, after that one time of yelling at her, I haven't really felt that lost. It's just like I know the stuff. I don't quite know how to put the words to that.
No, I think we understand because it's sort of like something that you either feel or you don't, I think.
Yes, it's somebody said when I told them the story a couple of months ago, they said, "Okay, so now you believe that there's life after that experience." And I said, "No, I don't. I do not believe it. I don't hope it. I know it. It's not, it goes beyond that." And I think that it kind of feels a little isolating in a way because it's like I absolutely know it, no matter what anybody says. So it's not a belief because you believe in things you typically don't see or feel directly. So I don't believe and I don't hope. I know. So my life is different from people who believe in that or hope that there is something. There's it's an absolute knowledge. I've got legs, I've got feet, I've got a hand, and it's a different form of living from what I had before. All the things that happened to me since I was about 18, I've had experiences, and I've always just put them aside and not address them like the NDE and that whole thing. It's just something that happened. I'll deal with it. Life's got busy, but now that this has happened and what's happened, all the communication afterwards, I recognize that I have lived my life knowing. I just didn't know that I knew. Now I know that I know.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I've heard this before from somebody who said, listen, I wouldn't believe if this hadn't happened to me, but it's not that I believe, it's just that I know. I've been
Yeah,
there, I've seen it.
yeah,
So it's not whether I believe in it or not, it's, yeah.
yeah. It just is. It's a fact. The sky's there. You walk on the ground. It just is. It's yeah. There's no doubt, and it has changed how I look at every day, how I live life. I'm less not that I was ever afraid. I was afraid to lose Katie. It was scary to lose my mom and my dad, but it's different in that not that things don't matter, but that love and kindness matter more than anything. In that it doesn't, if before if I was afraid to drive somewhere. No, I'm not, because something happens, something happens. I know where I'm going. I don't know what it is, what to label it, because I didn't see beyond the gateposts and the people. I wasn't given an insight into that. But it's okay. So it has made things easier in a sense. Yeah, in a lot of ways it has.
I can imagine that for sure. And I will say, like, I also felt, I mean, I haven't had such experiences, but hearing it from so many people, it's almost like it relays that conviction, that this just is, like, this is just what happens.
Yeah.
And I feel so, I mean, often when people don't talk about that, but also like if somebody ever says something, I just would like to say to them, but it's gonna be fine. You shouldn't worry, because
Yeah.
from what I'm hearing is not bad at all.
No, and that's the thing is it doesn't matter. Well, I'm not saying it doesn't matter what you do, but at the end of this life, you don't have a choice. There's a life after it. It's going to happen. So it's to me extremely comforting. And what's been interesting is that well, until I started the interviews, okay, I'm careful who I spoke to about it because I live in a small community. But occasionally I find somebody that I'm not, when I say not close to, but I know who they are, but we're not friendly, or we're friendly but not friends as such. And it happened just the other day. It's like the story just has to come out. And when that happens, the people listening to it, they either say right in the moment, or I get, whether it's an email or a phone call or next time I see them, they said, that really helped me because of this, this, and this. So it's interesting that in sometimes people will ask about it and I'll give them the short little non-emotional version, or it just comes spilling out. And those are the people that say, okay, I needed that, or I needed to hear some, or whatever part of the story, whether it was general dying or whether it's a child that's committed, or somebody who's committed who's died, is getting when I share it.
So on the topic that you've seen, I believe it was your nephew?
Yes.
that you've seen that committed suicide. What did seeing him there and seeing him being happy, what did that confirm for you?
It's always made me angry when people say if somebody dies by suicide that they're going to go to hell, because that's not fair to say to somebody who's grieving, number one. And now I know it's not true. And being given that, it's easier to share the near death and the shared death experiences and all the others because that's a wide audience. The audience that hears about somebody who's passed by suicide is much narrower. And Matthew was my nephew, but I don't feel that I have the I would like to just emphasize that if you know somebody who's died from suicide, they are okay. That is so important. And it didn't change my way of thinking. It confirmed my way of thinking.
That's exactly where I wanted to get to, because I know sometimes from religious perspectives, we are taught certain things, and I think a lot of the things we're taught, or the things that we're, have been told so many times, we end up saying them as well, or taking them as the truth. I think they're not always true.
Yeah.
And we never really question them, because if you've grown up and went through tens of years with a certain belief, then you would never really question it because it's part of you. And indeed, to me, it seems like the part of, that people are different if they have gone away by suicide. It seems like a man-made rule, to be honest, that something
Yes.
different happens to them. Just as if we say, well, if you've been divorced, or if, it's just an arbitrary line.
Yeah.
Who decides what makes somebody a good person or a bad person? We just
Yes.
draw a line in the sand and we say, oh, if you're divorced, then you go over to the bad people, and everybody who hasn't done that, you're a great person. And we can do that with blonde and brunette. We can do that with everything, right?
Yes. Yes.
And again, when you talk about people being addressed, especially when somebody passed away and they're grieving, and also other people bringing this upon them to burden them even
Yeah.
further, it
Yeah.
seems unbelievable. So it's great that I have read some comments, and I know that part of our audience has had events like this happening, and I have heard in other interviews as well of people being in touch with family members that have passed away by suicide, also saying that they're okay.
Yeah.
So I believe the evidence is quite strong,
Well,
suggesting.
well, yes, and just amongst the few people there, you had my nephew who died by suicide. You had my mom and dad who'd been divorced and remarried. Well, my dad had remarried, and my aunt who was an absolute non-believer in any religion. And there's a broad spectrum of people, and yet they were all there. They were all, and yeah, it's taken away. I never really, I never believed in those lines we say we draw. If you do it this way, if you brunette or blonde, then you go to heaven or hell. That didn't make, but again, that all just confirmed it for me. That whole experience is just a confirmation.
Absolutely. And one of the beliefs that I'm getting more and more in the last period of time is that we're really nobody to judge, right? And to say this is good, this is bad. And
Yeah.
whenever we feel ourselves having an opinion that's of the sort of, you're wrong for doing this, or I mean, we have it with politics all the time, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And it seems like we are not here to do that. We are not here to say, no, you're seeing things wrongly. We are just here to accept and be loving and supportive.
Yeah.
And what I've learned to do is, if I feel myself in a situation where I cannot bring that part of me out, if it's not genuine, then it's not. But then I will just remove myself from that situation, instead of just being judgmental and saying, no, this isn't right, you shouldn't do it this way.
And yes, that's the case. And also, if you get yourself into a situation where you become judgmental, doesn't mean you're not going to go somewhere fantastic afterwards. That's a human condition. We're here with human conditions, and it doesn't really matter if we slip up. I don't even think that it matters, because we're here for when people say a learning experience. I think we're just here for the experience. So even the negative experiences, whether it comes from us or we're subjected to it, are part of why we're here. We have to learn that, whether it's something we created or is given, put upon us. So one other thing I wanted to say about that is listening to a lot of people with their NDEs and their other experiences. There are people who they've seen other beings and they've seen bright lights and they've heard music and they've all sorts of stuff. Because I wasn't shown any of that. I really strongly believe that we are given what we need, not what we want. So somebody who's grown up in a heavily religious, whichever one it is, situation might see a shared death experience vastly different from mine. But that's what I needed, not what I maybe wanted. I didn't even know I needed it. But yeah,
Yeah, it sounds to me, because when you were telling me the story, I was wondering, was that experience for you or was it for Katie? Who was it made for? And I couldn't figure it out. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it was in the moment, it was absolutely 100% for Kate. Because even when we were at that halfway mark and I was telling her again how important she was for me, I didn't get feedback from her. And I was also, when I came out of that, I was surprised that I wasn't, or I was surprised that I was able to say the things I said to her, like how much I'm going to miss and how much I loved her and how all that, without breaking down. How was I able to say that final goodbye without the emotion? How was I happy to not have my family look at me, but all look at Kate, to feel the total joy that it was Kate, to her not turning around again. It was utterly not about me. That walk was all for Kate. I think the repercussion is there always an action and reaction. I think that has been something that I look on as an incredible gift, that I was able to do that with her. I remember watching my daughter giving birth, and obviously it was her child. So it wasn't for me, but having the privilege of watching that is a gift as much as this was a gift, and it's literally changed everything about how I think about things. It's confirmed that it's okay to think the way I did, but in a deeper knowing way. So in a sense, it was for both of us, but in the moment, it was utterly for her.
Beautiful. Annie, would you like people to get in touch with you? And if so, how can they find you?
Yes, I'm really open to that. I have a Gmail account. I have started writing these and a whole lot of other experiences down, but I don't have any website or anything at this point. So my Gmail is the one you've got, anniesSDE@gmail.com. And I love getting emails and I'll answer every one of them. And if they've got a story to tell, I'm just super keen to hear it.
It was so extraordinary. And it happened when I was only a teenager at 14 years old. My mother, she was going to be getting divorced, and I had to have a cavity filled. And my dad was not giving her the money that he normally would to take me to my regular dentist. So a clinic opened up a couple minutes away from our home. And, my mother, she thought nothing of taking me to the dental clinic just to have a cavity filled. But this dentist, if he even was a real licensed dentist, I didn't notice any diplomas up on the wall. So he just gave me an overdose of the nitrous oxide gas, which completely cut off my oxygen supply. It stopped my heart. I had no pulse, and they were going to give up on CPR because, they just kept trying and could not get a pulse back. And during the time that CPR was being performed on me, my soul left my body, and it traveled through a long, dark, speeding tunnel. It seemed to go on for miles and miles and miles at like this such a quick speed that, I think I knew that somehow my body was left behind in the dental chair, and it was just my soul traveling through this long speeding tunnel. And I wasn't scared, it was just more like anticipating, like, what's going on and where is this tunnel going to lead me out to. So finally, at the end of the long speeding tunnel, it opens up into the brightest light where my 3 guardian angels were waiting for me. And they told me, they said I had an accident back at the dentist, and they said they were sent to wait for me in the light, and they told me that I was safe with them in heaven, and they really wanted me to stay with them. But I kept saying, I have to go back. I have to go back. My mom really needs me because, I was my mother's only daughter. I have 2 older brothers, but my mother only wanted a girl, and she kept going until she finally had me. So I just felt like she wouldn't be able to survive if she lost her only daughter, and, just so suddenly without so much as a goodbye, love you, So I kept saying, I have to go back. My mom really needs me. So my guardian angels said they gave me a choice to stay in heaven or return to my life with an important purpose. They told me to think very carefully because they said you will only get this one chance to stay here in heaven, or you will live a very long life back on earth. They said it's going to be very challenging in exchange for being sent back to my life, but I would be sent back with an important purpose. And they said, before you make up your mind, they said, there's something that we want to show you. And all of a sudden, I'm watching my own funeral. What it would be like if I stayed in heaven and didn't go back to my life. And everyone was at my funeral, my family, friends, teachers, neighbors. And of course, everybody was sad, but the only one who was beyond inconsolable was my mother. It was a closed casket, but she was throwing herself on top of my casket. She was screaming, crying, pleading with me, Alyssa, my baby, don't leave me. I love you. Come back to me, Alyssa. And so I said to my guardian angels, you see, I have to go back. My mom really needs me. And they said, of course, your mother will be very hurt. They said, but in time, she'd be a lot better than she was seeing her at my funeral. So, and they said, your relationship is going to be not what you think. It's not going to be a bed of roses. It's going to be very turbulent, but you will always have a special bond and be able to know what the other one is thinking and finish each other's sentences. And they said, think very carefully because you will be so much happier if you stay here in heaven with us. And, it was like so peaceful and beautiful, and they're promising me eternal paradise and bliss in heaven with them. So every time that they would promise me, eternal peace and happiness, there was a big, tall, white door. And they said, if you pass through this door, then there is no turning back. You have to stay here with us. They said, you will be so amazed at what is behind this door, so much more of glorious heaven and who is behind it. So every time that they would say that to me, I would say, okay, I think I'll stay. And I would inch closer towards the door. But then I would see my mom flinging herself on top of my casket again, begging, screaming, Alyssa, don't leave me. I love you. Come back to me. Then I would inch away from the door, and I was crying. I said, I just don't know what to do. I just don't know what to do. And then all of a sudden I hear footsteps and God is standing right in front of me. I am face to face with God, our Heavenly Father, creator of the universe. And God says to me, what's the matter, my child? Why are you crying? Why are you so upset? And I said, I have to go back. My mom really needs me. As soon as I said that, God said to me, I understand. And he turned to my 3 guardian angels. He said, send her back immediately. And he said to me, but I'm sending you back with an important purpose. He said, once your soul's back in your body, you will not remember what that full purpose is until the time is right. He said, because I was much too young. at only 14 to handle such a big responsibility, being God's messenger. So I said, I understand. And I said to my 3 guardian angels, I said, I hope you're not upset for me not choosing, to stay here with you in heaven. And they laughed. They said, no, of course not. They said, you're going back with an important purpose. And they said, we're going to be watching over you your whole life. And when your time is up again, they said, we'll be waiting for you in the light again. And they did say that I was going to go through something very difficult, that I didn't think that I was going to be able to survive it. And they said, but you will survive it because we're going to be watching over you to make sure you get through it. And they said to me, whenever you're feeling lonely, you're going to feel something stroking your hair. And they said, that's going to be us comforting you. And sure enough, this was all true, everything that they said to me. So there's a little more that went on in heaven that I'm going to say from my book, Hope from Heaven, because I just don't want to say everything for the people who want to read it. It's like, would you go to a movie if you knew like everything and the ending? So I'll just save, the rest for the book. But so I hugged God and my 3 guardian angels. And as my soul was going back through that long, dark, speeding tunnel, just before my soul was completely back in my body, I heard and I saw everything going on in the dental clinic. The dentist was frantic because the hygienist said there's still no pulse. And the dentist was frantic and he was screaming, crying, oh my God, this never happened before. Don't give up. We have to get her back. She's only 14. Keep trying. So the hygienist, I felt the 3 thrusts on my chest and the 3 breaths in my mouth. And then maybe like a couple seconds later, I heard the hygienist say, there's a pulse now. We have her back. And the dentist screamed, thank God. And I laughed to myself and I said, I did just thank God personally, literally. So I was like in a daze and I said, what just happened? I was just in heaven. I was with God. And the dentist said, I believe it. He said, you were gone. He said, you had no pulse. We almost couldn't get you back. He said, do you forgive me? And I knew it was an accident, and it was so amazing just standing before God in heaven. So I said, yes, that I forgive him. And he couldn't finish filling the cavity, of course. He just said to my mother, he said something went wrong with the nitrous oxide. I couldn't do her cavity. Take her home, and if she doesn't feel well, take her to the emergency room. And, he didn't tell my mother that I actually died because I know he was afraid of losing his license, of course. So I didn't go to the hospital, but I did not feel well for the rest of the day. And I know the reason why he told my mother to take me to the emergency room if I didn't feel well, because a couple years later, my mom and I were watching on the news that a 17-year-old girl died the same way, having a cavity filled, and they gave her an overdose of the nitrous oxide. They were able to revive her too, but then when she went home in the morning, she was dead, So that's why he said that. And my uncle was the biggest dentist in Westchester, and he said to me, I never use nitrous oxide in my practice. That stuff kills people. And I was like, I know, it killed me, So I blocked it out for several years because I just wanted to go on living my life, as a normal teenager. I just wasn't ready to it was such a powerful thing. I just needed a long time to really come to terms with it myself. But then, and I didn't even tell my mother about it until I saw that on the news with her. And then I actually did tell her what happened to me. And I said, I chose to come back to my life for you. And my mom said, thank God, And then a couple of years after that, in my early 20s, I did go through that terrible thing that I was warned about from my guardian angels. And after I went through that, I started to do soul searching within myself. And I said, now I'm ready to really, dig into why that happened to me. Like, am I the only person in the world who actually did come face to face with God? And when I did research it, I couldn't find anybody else who did actually meet God like I did. You know, I read other near-death experiences where they said maybe they met Jesus and they said maybe, you know, like they felt God's light and love and his energy, but they never actually came face to face with him. I did, in human form. He was in human form. And then when my beloved boyfriend, Todd Irvin, who was a famous supermodel, when he passed away 2 weeks after he died, because I was completely heartbroken, I felt like I was going to die of a broken heart. I literally felt my body shutting down. So 2 weeks after Todd died, God's Spirit came down to me and healed me completely. It was a whirling mist with light in the center, and it kept whirling down closer and closer to me. I was in my bed, so it started, I saw up on my ceiling the whirling mist with the light in the center, and it was whirling down, and as soon as it was close enough to me, I saw two arms extend with all this light radiating down throughout both arms. And this is more extraordinary than when I stood before God in heaven, because the two arms with the light, it wrapped around me and it lifted my back up. And all of that light and love and healing energy was pulsating all like into me, where I never felt anything like that in my entire life. And then I was complete, and maybe it was like for a minute, and then just the whirling mist with the light just disappeared. In the morning, I jump out of bed. I am completely healed. My heart was not broken anymore. I couldn't believe it. I went to speak to a priest and a rabbi because I said, wasn't that my beloved boyfriend, Todd's spirit, who came and healed me? And they both said, no, that could only have been God's spirit, because only God can heal you completely. You know, so that was just, I mean, I have never felt anything like that in my entire life. And I knew then, okay, I'm healed. I can go on now. And then I can help heal others, you know, with like my fascinating, you know, story, what happened to me. And then I wrote my book, Hope from Heaven, and I got it published, because that way I'm able to reach out to everybody. And I do podcasts also to let people know that when your loved ones die, you know, you just leave your body behind physically. Spiritually, you are still alive. You're in another dimension. Of course, you're in heaven, but our loved ones, they are always with us. They're loving us, guiding us, and protecting us from heaven. And they don't want us to be so sad and grieving them. They actually want us to celebrate them, because they're the happiest that they have ever been in heaven. You know, my mom passed away last year, and she came to me in a visitation dream, and she said, Alyssa, don't be so sad, because I'm the happiest that I have ever been. And she was no longer in her old, sick, tired, suffering body. She was young, and she was beaming. She was glowing, you know. She was so happy that when I woke up, that was the last time I cried that she died, you know, because she came to me a week after she died in that dream. And I had been crying every day prior to that visitation dream. So it's so important that everybody knows that true love never dies. It is endless, you know, and, you know, our soul, it's in an earthly body living, you know, our soul's in a physical body living an earthly experience. And then, you know, when our time is up here, our soul just leaves the body behind, and it goes back to where we came from, you know, that original source of energy in heaven. And it's just a higher consciousness, you know, a higher dimension. So we're in the 3D, they're in the 5D, but we still communicate spiritually all the time. And people say to me, but what if, like, I don't dream about my loved ones? They don't come to me in visitation dreams. So, but I say, but there's all different kinds of ways that our loved ones come to us to communicate with us spiritually. And birds are messengers of spirit. And if you go to my YouTube channel at Alyssa Hope 4524, you'll see some amazing videos. One is a visit from my deceased twin flame, and it's my beloved deceased boyfriend, Todd Irvin. He came to me. You'll see the angel on my grass going into the water, and all of these birds, they're circling in a frenzy all around, picking up on the angel energy. It's just so incredible. Birds really are messengers of spirit. And then when my boyfriend passed away, he died in January, and his birthday is August 31st. So his first birthday that he was in heaven, I was thinking, I wish that Todd was here with me physically, to celebrate his birthday with him. As soon as I thought that, there was a loud boom, a loud crash. And when I looked, a beautiful big kingfisher belted bird slammed into my patio door. And I mean, sadly it died, but I knew that it was a message from Todd in heaven. And I Googled it, and it said very often on the when our loved ones pass away, they come to us on their birthday in the form of a bird, and it'll hit your window, and it will die, and it's our loved one from heaven letting us know that they're still always with us spiritually. So I also, I videoed that, and I took pictures, and I mean, it's just all so comforting to know that our loved ones, they're still with us. So, do you have any questions?
Yeah, that's so beautiful, Alyssa, and so many things that I want to follow up on. But I think what I wanted to get into first was, this duality that we are basically raised and told that when somebody dies is a sad thing and we need to be grieving.
Right.
And
Right.
when we look at NDEs, when we look at your experience, it's actually, we understand it's not a sad thing when somebody passes on.
Right.
They're leaving behind the pain, the suffering, the physical body, but they're much better. However, when you love somebody, just like, in the case of your boyfriend, in the case of your mother, there's still an element of loss because you still cannot have the same relationship that you had previously.
Right.
So how do you then reconcile, on the one hand, the happiness that they are in a better place and everything is perfect for them and they're just feeling love all the time, with the sadness that they're not here with you?
I know, exactly. Well, you have to feel that you love them so much to let them go because, you want what's best for them. And if they were suffering like a long terminal illness, you wouldn't want them to be suffering any longer, And I'll give you another example. When my mom at the end of her life, she was suffering, and it was painful for me to see how she was suffering. So, I whispered in her ear, I said, Mom, when you've had enough suffering, I said, it's okay to let go. I said, go towards the light, and she understood, and she did. And then when she did die, I said, I loved her enough to let her go. And this is incredible. She heard me say that, because then a little later on, I went in my car. I had to go into town and pick up something, and I turn on the radio, and the song just comes on the radio, Let Her Go. And I knew it was my mom, because I said I loved her enough to let her go. And then you'll get chills. So I come home couple hours later, I go in my house and I turn on the radio to it. It's a different radio station. And what song is just coming on the radio? Let Her Go. That I screamed out loud. I was like, Mom, it's you. I know it's you, so they are still with us. So you just, I say that Todd and my mother, I am closer with them now spiritually than I was with them when they were here physically. So if you are spiritual and you tap into your spirituality, you're going to see this all in a whole different light, and it's actually, I'm telling you, more beautiful, the relationship spiritually with them, than when they were here physically. So you just you have to clear all of your negative energy, because they can come to you a lot more if you're not dealing with that negative energy, So I always say, pray to God and ask Him to have your loved ones communicate with you spiritually. And if you have a close relationship with God, you pray to Him for divine awareness, authentic power, peace, clarity, love, and purpose. You're going to see everything in a different way. And just that heaviness, that sadness, it's going to change, and you're going to become like this whole enlightened spiritual being, because that's really what we are. We're spiritual beings living this earthly, experience. And I always say life is just a moment of eternity,
Yeah.
and we're all going to die one day. So we need to really, make them proud of us. You cherish their memory and you keep their memory alive by honoring them and making, do something like special that that would make them so proud of you. And even like that happened to me with my mom when that song came on the radio. I'm sure, has that ever happened to you? You just, a special song comes on at a certain time, or on your anniversary, with your loved one, because a lot of people say that to me. So you really just, and I get number signs all the time. And do you know, I did not know that my boyfriend Todd had passed away yet. When he came to me in a visitation dream and he held me, he told me he loves me, he will always be with me. And then I woke up and found out he died. So at first, of course, I was completely shocked and devastated, and I collapsed. And I said, but he just came to me in a dream and was holding me, telling me he loves me and will always be with me. So I said, even though he's in heaven, he is still here with me spiritually, And then getting back to my purpose, when it was revealed to me, it was fully revealed to me on the morning of Todd's memorial service. And this is so incredible. I wake up the morning of his memorial service and I look out my window. Now, this is mind-blowing. Straight in front of me, and it's not like they were just parked there waiting for me to get up. They were still slowly moving. So what's the odds? There were a gorgeous pair of swans gently floating together right before my very eyes. And in the 17 years that I'm living here, there has never been one swan in the water. We get seagulls, geese, never swans. So I knew this is a sign from Todd. So I run outside and my grass is all wet. My house slippers are all wet. I'm in my pajamas. I don't care. I run down to the water and I'm yelling, Todd, wait, because I just knew it's him. So when I get down to the water, the swans are still gently floating together. When they're almost out of my sight, they turn towards me, their necks entwine and their bills touch, kissing. Can you imagine what a breathtakingly beautiful sight that is? Took my breath away. So I run back in my house because I know there's a message for me. I Google, what does a pair of swans mean spiritually? Sure enough, it comes up that a swan are the twin flame spirit animal, and they represent the eternal love of oneness between two beings. And twin flames are one soul that was split into two bodies and share the same consciousness. And they're sent here in their last lifetime when their soul's very advanced. And they're sent here as a light worker to raise the vibration of love and energy throughout the world. So that was my full purpose, that I knew not only am I God's messenger, but I'm a light worker to raise the vibration of love and energy throughout the world. And I just thought it was so fascinating, because Todd and I, when he was alive, we would say we're soulmates. You know, we didn't know what twin flames were. So I thought it was so incredible to know that Todd and I were twin flames, one soul that was split into two bodies, share the same consciousness, that our soul has been together from the moment of creation. So we're really not separated, you know. And the way that Todd and I met, they say very often you dream about your twin flame years before you ever meet, and you will get chills from this. I only saw one picture of Todd when I was a teenager, when I was 16 years old. Todd was a supermodel then, and so I saw a picture of him in a magazine. And as soon as I saw this picture of him, I declared him my Prince Charming, because he looked a lot in that picture like the prince from Cinderella, you know? So it was like more of a fairy tale to me, like a fantasy, saying, he's my Prince Charming. We're going to be together one day. But I don't think I really thought that that was going to happen. But then sure enough, years later, we did meet. You know, my fairy tale came true and we fell deeply in love. We were both separated, going to get married. We were both separated, going to get divorced to get married when he suddenly died. But so, as I said, twin flames, you often dream about your twin flame years before you meet. So after I saw that picture of Todd, that one picture where he was like 25 years old in that picture, I kept having this reoccurring dream throughout my life until I met him. But in my dream, he was the age that he was when I met him, and he was 62 years old when I met him. So he looked nothing like that one picture I saw of him when he was only 24, 25. So in the dream, he's waiting to marry me at the altar, and my mother is walking me down the aisle. I'm in my wedding dress, she's walking me down the aisle. And as soon as we get to the end of the aisle, Todd puts his hand out to take my hand. And when I reach my hand out to take Todd's hand, I always would wake up from that dream. So I would say, who is this man waiting to marry me, you know? And then as soon as I met Todd, 34 years later, I said, oh my gosh, that was you, you know, in my dream. I couldn't believe it. So it's been like such a fascinating journey, you know, of Todd and me and our twin flame union, you know, and he's just guiding me from heaven to help me complete our twin flames, you know, mission together. And once my time is up here, our soul, you know, will merge back together as one in heaven, where we'll be one with God for all of eternity. So that's what keeps me going here, you know. And I just, like, now for me, it's all about giving back. So, because like, it's been so incredible, my journey here through life, that I just want to do what God sent me back here to do, to help others to heal spiritually. So for me to know that one life has breathed easier because of you, that is purpose, you know, and my purpose. So I always tell everybody, every single day, try and do something kind. You know, do a good deed, even if it's just like holding the door open for somebody, or, you know, donating to your favorite charity. I'm the biggest animal lover, and all of the proceeds, all the royalties from my book goes towards animal rescue. And my mission is to expand a good no-kill animal shelter. And I want everybody to know that our pets, they're in heaven too, and we reunite with them. And how I know that for a fact is that on my beautiful daughter Raphaela's 16th birthday, Todd came to me in a visitation dream with my childhood dog, Shag. And Todd said, "Look who I have here with me. Look who is here to see you." And it was Shag. And he was running around circles, healthy again. He was so excited, to see me. And I just woke up so elated, and that they came to me on my daughter's 16th birthday, I just thought was so special too. So we all reunite with our pets in heaven, and they're just so beautiful. I get a lot of messages from people on my contact form on my author website, and so many messages are just that they're so comforted knowing that they will be with their precious beloved pets in heaven again. I think some people miss their pets more than, even people in heaven, because they give us such unconditional love. And when you spell dog backwards, it's God, so it's just really so beautiful. And that's why my mission is to expand a good no-kill animal shelter. Do you have any pets?
No, but this is the year where I will get a dog. I've been wanting one for many, many years, but I've always figured I don't know if I can handle the responsibility. Would I be enough at home? And finally, I decided I've been wanting and yearning for it for so long that,
Did you ever have a dog before, or it's your first?
No, it will be my first, because growing up, my mom, the most amazing human ever, but she's very scared of animals, any kind of animals, cats, dogs, any little thing, even if they're cute and cuddly, but she's terrified. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, it's funny. My mother was the same way. She was so afraid of dogs too, but then my dad, this was before they got divorced, on Valentine's Day he surprised us with a dog, my precious dog, who came to me in that visitation dream with Todd. So the first day that my dad brought him home, my mother was like, "Oh no," she was so afraid. But then that night, Shag, my beloved dog, and he was a pretty big dog, a German short-haired pointer, he jumped in the bed and he curled up next to my mother and he kissed her, on the cheek. And the rest is history. My mother fell so in love with that dog. She was like, she couldn't believe she was ever afraid of a dog. And she became the biggest animal lover then too. So you will see, Sabrina, it's going to be a fur baby. You'll say, "I don't know how I ever lived without one before." They just give you so much unconditional love, and they're funny, and they're just so darling. So you'll see it, and rescue one from like an animal shelter, and then you'll feel like who rescued who,
Yeah.
They're just so special. I can't wait until you get one. You'll see.
Yeah, same here. Yeah. I think it's been a long time coming, and I think with my mom as well, I do think that once she spends more time with the dog, I will definitely not get a dog that's, I think, maybe a bit too aggressive or so, because that wouldn't fit very well with my personality either.
Right.
So.
Right. Yes. I also had a miniature dachshund, Frankie. Oh, he was the biggest little lover boy. That's all he wanted to do, was just like give you a million kisses on your face. He was so cute. He would ride in the car. I was driving. My mom would be in the passenger seat, and he would get up on her shoulders and drape his body around her, and just so he could get to her cheek, to kiss up her cheek, And I received beautiful signs from Frankie too in heaven. So they're just so amazing. And anyone who has, like, is going through now the grief of having lost a loved one, dogs and cats are wonderful too. I happen to have a cat now who thinks he's a dog. You know, he acts like a dog, but they're wonderful therapy pets. So anyone who is grieving the loss of a loved one now, you know, if you don't have a pet, you should get one, because they truly will comfort you. When my Todd died and when my mom died, who was right by my side the whole entire time was my cat. Is my cat Simba, and you know he's called a Dwelf. It's a Sphinx hybrid, so he's like an exotic breed, and he's just so wonderful. You know, he sleeps underneath the covers with me, and he lets me. I walk around cradling him like a baby. You know, so cats, and when they purr, it's very comforting. It like lowers your blood pressure. That just hearing that purr, you know, so. I love dogs and cats. I'm the biggest animal lover. I see the beauty in all animals, and I feed the wildlife where I live. Get a lot of deer, and a baby fox will come to my back door, you know, and I just see the beauty in all animals. So I always tell everyone, be kind to animals, you know.
That's so important. And I think we always see the kindness of a person or the true nature of a person by how they treat animals, and next to that, people that are maybe serving them, or you know, people that are in service position around you, and the way you treat those, I think tells you a lot about a person.
Yes, I don't know how anybody could be anything other than kind to them, because they give such unconditional love, you know. I even helped a deer that was injured where I live, you know, and I looked like right into the deer's eyes, and I mean, they're so soulful, you know. I say that animals are God's gift to the world.
I definitely think that.
Yeah.
If I think of how much happiness I get when I play with a dog, or just, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Get a little dog. Your mom, she won't be afraid of a little dog. You know, don't bring a pit bull into the family, but like a little dog, you know. Poodles are very smart, and they're supposed to be like one of the smartest breeds, you know. Or even a little, I don't think your mom would be afraid of a little Chihuahua, right? They're the tiniest breed.
Yeah.
Just get one with the good temperament. You know, ask at the shelter, and say you need a very gentle, calm, nice dog.
Yeah, for sure. And luckily, the guy that I'm seeing, he's he's developing a platform for dogs, and it's just like a brand of dog food. So he has had dogs for a long time. So it's kind of nice that I have that extra support should our relationship last until then. But
yeah. And you don't have any children, right? So it'll really be a fur baby. Oh my gosh, yeah.
It will.
Just give them out. I don't know if you know this. I'm sure your boyfriend knows. Don't give them any chocolate, grapes, raisins, or onions. That's all toxic. They could die from it.
I knew about chocolate, but
yeah, raisins, grapes, onions, and no skin on chicken, and no chicken bones because the bones splinter. You buy them. Yeah. So do you want to get back to my near-death experience? I could talk about dogs, cats all day long. You know?
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned you were told that something would happen, something not very happy, and you've mentioned going through that experience in your 20s. So I wanted to ask if you wanted to share what had happened and how you moved through it. But also I wanted to know if you've ever regretted your decision to come back, and if there was ever a time where you thought, I should have stayed because I don't see how I'm getting out of this.
Right. Yes, of course. I'm only human, you know, so of course I go through my ups and downs, you know. So yes, there was that terrible thing that I went through. You know, I'll save that for the book. But I definitely then, I said, I was so peaceful in heaven. Why did I come back here, And so, but, when I did all my soul searching, then it helps me, it gives me the strength that I need to keep going. And now I wouldn't change anything that I went through because I'm in such a good place within myself now spiritually. And when God's Spirit came and healed me 2 weeks after Todd died, it made me like the strongest that I've ever been. So now, there's nothing that I can't go through that would bring me back to that point of saying, like, why did I come back here? Because I do know why I came back here, to try and make heaven a place on earth. So I think, now that my book is out, I'm doing this podcast, I just feel really good about why I'm here now. And I'm just happy I take every day and live it to the fullest extent now. And, I know life is just a moment of eternity. And before I know it, my time will be up again. So, but when I did feel that way, that was like when I was in my 20s, so I think everybody needs to always see the glass as half full, not empty, right? And that you always can turn your pain into purpose and turn tragedy into triumph, right? And I really feel that that's the best way I can leave off is to turn your pain into purpose and just always think positive, not negative, because I think a lot of people do that. And also to always practice self-love, because when we are grieving so deeply, I feel like we also tend to lose sight about, ourself, right? That you need to then just really practice self-love, do something, kind for yourself, something special. And every day always take some time out for yourself, to exercise. I swim a lot and it's so good for body, minds, and spirit. And always be humble and kind. I think that really all says it all, right? Do you have any other questions? And just know that true love never dies. It is endless.
That's so important and such wise words, Alyssa. Tell me, how can people connect with your work? And you've mentioned your book as well. Could you tell us what the name of it is and where can we find it?
Sure. I think I said it a couple times already, but I'll say it again. It's Hope from Heaven. And you can order it on Amazon. It was the #1 new release in near-death experience books. And also on my author website at alyssahope.com. And there's a link to Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And I always love to hear from my readers. There's, the contact form and my email address. And also check out my YouTube channel at Alyssa Hope 4524.